kind of advice do you have to homeowners?
Practicing that preparedness, starting the conversation now is always going to be a benefit to any association out there.
And welcome to Recovery Report Live, GlobalPro's deep dive into relevant business and insurance topics, providing actionable takeaways and valuable insights. We aim to update, educate, and inform you weekly. I'm Dan Odess, president of GlobalPro, where we manage risk to recovery. So happy New Year, guys. 2021, our first episode. Very excited to be here with you to inform you about all the other exciting things that are going on in our industry of insurance, real estate, and businesses. It's already starting out a little bit of a rocky new year, obviously, but there's always some silver linings, and there's always things you can do as either a business owner or community association to better prepare for the unexpected. Because if we learned anything from 2020 is that you absolutely have to practice preparedness, without a doubt. There's so many things that occurred in 2020 that so many people, many business owners, were caught off guard, not prepared, didn't have the right things in place in order to avoid the inevitable, which is going out of business. Even those that were prepared due to the tough economic times, they really had no choice but to wind down the business, transition. But a lot of people did transition because they considered the what if, or they had alternative means of income or ways in which to deal with this situation that they were better poised to sustain the issues that were created because of the economic downturn and the pandemic. So we want to make sure that we learn from those past mistakes as we head into the new year here, and we build upon that. And some of the things that we're seeing that is really relevant to a lot of business owners are major changes in insurance, both on the regulation side as well as the actual products. Particularly what I'm talking about is property insurance, real property insurance, general liability insurance coverage, and how those things are evolving because of the issues in the marketplace. It was already becoming a hard market. There's no question about that. But compound that with tough economic times, this confusion regarding coverage and exclusions and limitations that the insurance industry has suggested long before even the first claims were being made that there's no coverage for this type of loss. There was opinions issued to the Small Business Administration on behalf of the industry that said that no policies sold to businesses were intended to cover these things. A lot of general nonsense statements, real bullshit. And fortunately, a number of people have prevailed on the issue and have obtained reasonable coverage for their income losses. That's a story that's less told. I think it's becoming part of the process and part of the basis of lawsuits that have been filed on behalf of business owners, where they're talking about why the coverage does apply and the intention of the exclusion for viruses and things like that, dating back early 2000s. I think through education, whether it's through the courts and the community, I do see many businesses prevailing on coverage. If anything else, there's talks of pandemic-related insurance coverage and national product. We'll see how these things evolve, but it's definitely something that we're going to be tracking here, something that all of you should be monitoring as a businesses, as well as community associations, because community associations incurred a tremendous amount of expense and continue to see increased amount of costs associated with the pandemics, whether it's just the regular management of the property or in dealing with other disasters and increased costs in order to actually mitigate and rebuild, whether that's for their contractors and protective gear, whatever it may be. They're having to do things that ran an expense that was otherwise not budgeted for. So as you go through budget season and you do prepare for the expected, make sure that you also are preparing for the unexpected. And I think that's definitely something that a lot of people need to take a lot more consideration for when they're doing those things. And something that's helping us plan for the unexpected is technology. We're seeing major change in InsurTech, as it's more formally referred to now. We at GlobalPro have made that investment. We continue to develop products. We're excited to bring a new product to market here in 2021. Hopefully within the first quarter. Our team in Washington, D.C. is working very hard to get that done. And we hope to create enough transparency to create what otherwise would be formally referred to as disruption and in a way that is a good thing, both for consumers as well as for insurance companies and the market as a whole. We really want that transparency. The insurance companies are not our enemy. The insurance companies do offer a product that is helpful. It's there to help us when we have loss and damage. Unfortunately, I see a lot of the marketing strategy talking about saving us time and a lot of other things that has nothing to do with why you bought insurance. And I really think that's where becomes more about profit than it does about recovery and making someone whole. And I hope through some transparency and the advent of technology and the accessibility of it, that we can kind of really get back to that. One of the issues that's really plaguing a local market here in South Florida is construction defects, defective workmanship, and trends in construction that are coming to the forefront here as we roll into 2021. We've obviously, everyone sees the news articles about major businesses coming to this area. It's just a exodus out of major metropolitan areas into our urban core, and a demand for real estate, which is driving new projects, which is driving, I may argue, overuse of buildings or an increased amount of use of systems in those buildings, and really testing the design of those systems and then the properties, and unfortunately in some instances leading to failures in those systems and a whole new set of claims and issues that we're trying to deal with. I just had, just more recently, a couple weeks ago, we got a new claimant that we're investigating for community association, where an insurance company is taking the position that while a manufacturer and installer recommends the replacement of it, the insurance company wants to offer some type of warranty program that it almost seems like they're insinuating it continues beyond the expiration of the policy. Again, I think it's a little bit of BS, and I don't really actually think that's what they're intending to do, but it's a creative way to get out of paying significantly more dollars for damages. But we need to track these things, and this particular loss occurred because you had a unit owner that would typically only use a unit maybe a couple weeks out of the year and has been in the unit for months on end. And now that they're in the unit, using it more, they had a system fail in that unit, which caused significant damage to the property. So things you need to track, things you need to be aware of as a community association property manager. Be on the lookout for these things. Start monitoring these things. Start talking to your building engineers and your engineers. And speaking of engineers, I'm very excited about our next guest. Our next guest is president of Willcott Engineering, a well-known and respected engineering firm, provides services to community associations in the South Florida market and developers, contractors. Very highly and well-respected engineering firm. And I want to bring on Miss June Willcott. Hey, June, how you doing?
Great. Good to be here.
Well, thanks for joining us. Happy New Year. We had a little bit of an opportunity to talk for a couple minutes before we went live here with the broadcast. So I want to get right into it and start asking some questions about some of the things that you're seeing, some of the trends out there, obviously, as being the topic. So when you think construction defect, defective workmanship, a lot of people think, especially in the community association world, 558, which is a Florida statute, obviously here in Florida. I want to talk a little bit about what works, what doesn't work. So let's start with what's working. What do you see that works with the 558 process?
Well, the goal of the 558 is to take a building that's been built by others and hand it to an association, evaluate that building, see how it's performing, where its good and bad are in it, and if there are things that need to be corrected, construction defects, to engage in a dialogue with the party and resolve it. Seems pretty straightforward, right, Dan?
You'd think so. But as we found, it's not. I mean, if you actually read the first paragraph of the Florida statute under 558, it's an alternative to costly litigation. I mean, I'm using my own words, but I'm summarizing in a short amount of time here. And that's all it's all about. It literally says the intent is to do that. Are you seeing that, though?
No, not always. The system's kludgy, lethargic. And if you really work through the requirements of construction litigation and what the litigation processes are, it is lethargic or kludgy. Plus, if you compound it with the number of experts you might need, depending on what the defect is it mechanical? Is it electrical, elevator, roof, structure? So you have two pots of very different parties there that can get kind of rich quickly. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that's it's obviously what's not working. Where have you seen community associations benefit from the 558 process, and how do they do it? And do they do it differently than others? And if so, like what about it? What did you think was different?
Well, I think it has to do with the parties that are involved and what the defect is. And there's also a big range in what the cost is. What are the actual cost of what the defect is? How many parties are responsible? Is it a single thing or is it a lot of things? The things that work in the process and that condominium associations should be assured of is that there is a formalized process in which you're able to hold those parties accountable for the defects and get corrective work or monetary offset for you to be able to manage your own corrective work in it. So it's a really good way for you to own your building through that process, through the evaluation of it and correction, identification, and construction defects.
Where do you see boards, the community association boards? Where do you see that? Where do you see that? What is their role in it from your perspective, and how can they actually help facilitate the process?
Really important role. And they're the voice of the building, and they're going to be the decision maker for how much of the attorney is involved, how much of the engineers are involved, where are their budgets, what destructive testing are they going to do, what programs need to be looked at further in terms of substantiating any of the defects they looked at. So it'd be ideal if a board could stay on for the duration of the 558 process. Sometimes we see construction committees form that do that. Continuity helps.
Yeah, I think continuity is a big thing. Continuity is a big word in the insurance industry as business continuity, things like that. And I think I can't stress that enough. I mean, there's a reason why we talk about business continuity as preparing for the unexpected, and I think a board transition is one of those things. I can't agree with you more. I think construction committees is a fantastic idea because while the board may transition and change, and some of those committee members may become board members or get off the board, usually the construction committees, what I've seen from my perspective, has been consistent, and I think consistency is another good C word that if you practice consistency, continuity, I think they're interchangeable. Obviously, I think that you're going to see obviously a much more favorable result. There's a lot of criticism out there about a lot of professionals, some of your competitors, obviously, as well as law firms and other experts, really turning this whole 558 process into really like a cottage industry. What is your take on that? What's your opinion regarding it?
It can feel like that. You can get into the cookie cutterness of it. And I think you can get lost in it and look at a puzzle of 1,000 pieces and not be able to discern the 7 pieces that you need. So you really need some sophistication in the process and some way to be able to sieve out. We like it if there's someone on the board who has experience in construction or in development. We find it helps, but we don't necessarily need that. You just need people that are able to stay within the processes and points in it, and that are willing to absorb a fair amount of technical information. There's no way around it. It's a pretty technical arena.
Oh, absolutely. And myself being a licensed general contractor, owns, operates, builds, does these things. I have an engineering education. We have to share a little bit. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. It's a lot of these things seem secondhand to me, and it's like, oh no, why are you doing that? And then you start asking them, that board member, about their background, and school teacher, accountant. It's really just not relevant to making these technical decisions, and obviously why they rely on that. And again, in any industry, there's always bad apples, and those bad apples tend to, at times, really are used to highlight the whole a problem going on. But reality of it is that most are not part of that, and that's really why I want to continue talking about these things, because I hear the idea of a cottage industry. I see some of those bad actors, But for the most part, like yourself, not just because you're on, but for the most part, you respect the process and you respect your client.
I find that to be true. I find that to be very true. And among engineers and architects that are in this investigation of what a construction defect is, the thing that boards want to look for is someone who has enough integrated experience and local experience in the South Florida market to be able to help discern what's the problem for the building later.
Yeah.
You or I might be able to have a construction defect that is the rise to run on a stair and an egress stair at the roof.
Yep.
And that's very different than us talking about the horizontal sliding window has weep systems that are inherently flawed that will always dump water through the facade.
Yeah.
And so you really need to help know what that is. And I think that could be a poor illustration, but you do end up bogged down in a technical arena of rights and wrongs and construction defects.
I couldn't agree more. I had a recent case where the association was not so happy with the process and they weren't getting anywhere. Start looking into it, and I realized while they have a lawyer here in Florida that's of counsel to them, the case was actually being managed at a Chicago office by a team of Chicago attorneys. And I'm just like, you really don't have your finger on the pulse of the market at such a great distance to handling something so technical. This wasn't just like a hurricane claim or something. This is like so many moving parts to a construction claim. And also there's confusion between making a construction claim and a 558 lawsuit too. And they had presented this as if it was like just this that inevitable lawsuit. And I think that's another issue that I see where the expectation is that you need to litigate these things. And we've been working real hard to educate so many people about this. Is the expectation going into this should not be, I'm going to have to sue. So, we always talk about is that there's a lot of things you can do. And again, going back to that first paragraph of the Florida statute, read it. It's an alternative to the costly litigation. So treat it that way. Look at this objectively. We're getting involved in these things all the time. We work with counsel. There's issues that absolutely will need to be litigated. Not always, but there is. And there's a role for them to play in litigating. But I think it's important to understand that there's a complicated process. Obviously, continuity is a big one. I love this. And people need to key in on those things. So let's get into, I want to get into the minutia. I want to get into little details. What are making these claims? Why are we even talking about this? Is there any material or workmanship thing that you're seeing that's changed, that's leading to an increased amount of these lawsuits and claims that are being made against these contractors and developers?
I've seen in the market that we trend up and down, and sometimes we have more skilled labor and sometimes we have less skilled labor, and sometimes we build really fast and sometimes we build partway quit and then years later come back and build again. So we have plenty of opportunity to do quick, bad work. And I think if there was anything overall, I would say when we look at 558, there are three categories. It's code violation, it's not in accordance with plans and specs, or industry standard. And I think, Dan, for me, the category that resonates most is that not in accordance with plans and specs. And I see the developer market buy down the professionals' involvement during the construction originally. And there's not a voice to be able to say, this is what the drawings are, these are the specs, and integrate them into the field. So there are then specific trades, and you understand better than I do, each trade may or may not have its own insurance.
Yep.
And so you become a different process. Now you aren't one process, you could be six.
Yeah. I was involved in a pretty significant high-rise construction project in Miami, and one of the moves by ownership was actually to fire the architect that created the drawings, hire a new architect to oversee the project at their cost, as opposed to allowing us, I was working for the general contractor, to work with the architect that designed the building. because they said the costs were running too high because of all the changes that were being made. And so they wanted to bring in their own architect that they had a longstanding relationship with to make these changes that was going to do it at a lesser cost because they were in this big other planning project, as we later found out. And so they basically were doing this for free, it felt like. Maybe not free, but it kind of felt that way. To the point where, I'll be honest with you, myself and another project manager ended up running AutoCAD ourselves, making the changes in AutoCAD as a general contractor, submitting them to the architect for approval, to send them to ownership for final sign-off. Like, that's crazy. And it was all done to save money, not in... I know this building ended up in a whole bunch of heap of crap with lawsuits and all kinds of things went on for years. And I can't help but think that it was a result of really transferring the burden onto other people that shouldn't be dealing with it, and this cost-saving measure, and on a building, by the way, that was extremely profitable. But in the name of profit, we do all kinds of crazy things, as I'm sure you've seen. And I think that's one of your points, which is, why, I guess let's get into this. Why are developers not building what's spec'd on the plans?
Well, maybe it's more costly. Maybe they have a product that they can get quicker. Maybe it's a lead time. We are seeing that a lot. We talk about trends in the industry. My gosh, 2020 had delivery issues. So did 19. I'm suddenly waiting for ships to come into the port of Miami for a Palm Beach job. I never before called the port with the frequency that I needed to be able to provide the client assurance to freight pay ahead and all the things that go along with it.
So, June, you're a woman-owned business, I assume, and I'm sure it's had its challenges, certainly has all of its benefits. I would say in the engineering field, having gone through engineering education and working closely with a lot of engineers, that's unique. Let's call it what it is. I think it's fantastic, by the way. We've had a lot of women entrepreneurs on to talk about the awesome things that they're doing. And in fact, we had a mompreneurship come on, talk about that and what that all meant. So I'm a big proponent of talking about business and how things work and everything else. How do you see the 2020 and beyond? How did it impact your business, and what changes have you had to make because of it?
Oh, it's been dynamic. It's really been a time for renewal and one of evaluation and where you are in it. We saw a lot of condominium projects that did not go. And in fact, we even saw a building not far from you in the Grove that we'd done specs for. It was a commercial building for painting and sealing work, and they suspended that work. Yeah. So we saw projects that were at a $15 million level be bought down to $8.5 million. I've seen engineering service fees drop. I've seen clients, they're sort of gutless. They're calling and saying, will you as engineer record for 1% of the contractor's fee? Where in the industry that number is probably 7.5 on a low end and more like 10 and 11. And so when you have someone asking you to do it for 1%, it's easy not to feel guile. What have we seen from our boards? It's been a good challenge. What they've said is, I've only got $1 this year, and I know I've got $100 worth of building need. Can you come help us prioritize? Can you look at, I'm spending more time with people looking at capital reserve. What do I do? Do I do it next year, 3 years? So we're being more creative in what you do with the dollar for the building.
I think in our industry, in insurance services, we have many different service offerings. And I would say when it comes to the public adjusting, we've seen similar things where, through legislation, they restricted our fees. But then you have people entering the market that at times that GlobalPros are competing against, and we're trying to add this service, offer the service as a value add. And they're coming in with such low numbers where you're just like, look, man, this is all I do. Like, I know what the bottom line. Yeah.
I agree with you. I'm sorry to speak over you, but I think it hits the baseline that's so low. And I sort of say this to communities. Think about what you're asking for. Don't go to Publix and get $100 of groceries and demand them for 10. Yeah. It's just, think about what that impact. And when you set such a low threshold, it isn't sustainable, Dan. And we come in on the backside of collapsed jobs because there weren't fees and funding to be able to properly get in front of the insurance.
Well, I was going to tell you, I know Matt Sangstring, manager of our GlobalPro venture out of New York, would love to know all about those projects. We're always looking for opportunity to acquire and do those things. And on the GlobalPro side, I mean, if someone signs someone up at that lower percentage, an engineer, it's inevitable that something's going to go wrong in the building, and we're going to get the phone call to handle the insurance claim. So, you know, I'm poised and ready for that stuff, and I'm expecting that this cycle. We saw it after the last cycle from 2008 to 2012, where you like, I mean, it was just it was these cycle buildings that. They transferred ownership like several times. They had different contractors on them, subcontractors, engineering professionals. The buildings are a mess. And I mean, they're on the public adjusting side, they're our number one clients because the pipes are breaking, the building's not built right, the elevator's noisy as heck, and you know, you go on and on and on. And it's reoccurring revenue as far as I'm concerned. You want to be stupid enough to do it. I mean, I'm there to help you get out of it. But the purpose of this show is, and our broadcast is to teach people that there's an alternative thing. Think differently about this stuff. You know, this is actionable information, and you're providing tons of great advice. Some things that, you know, while I've heard them, I haven't seen them in practice. And great to hear you talk about them because I know you're practicing that, and I hope your clients are listening to you. But you're even seeing people where you give them the best advice, they're still going to do what they shouldn't be doing.
Oh, yes. Yeah. And I see this as an opportunistic market for that, Dan. So you have to be flexible today. And I do think you're going to see a lot of bad deals in the ground that'll come through this.
Yep.
And we'll have work on the other side.
Yeah, exactly. You and I both. But that's the thing is like, I take no sense of pride in it for sure. And honestly, there's enough going on in other aspects of the insurance industry that, and as far as on the claim recovery side, that we don't need that. You know, it is presenting more and more opportunity every day for you and myself at the same. But the reality of it is that I wouldn't be talking about it today if I didn't think something needed to change, and I don't think you would be voicing your opinion so strongly about it as well if the people didn't need to start considering other avenues and considering what they're actually doing more so than ever. But how do you think these issues, I guess, can be avoided? I mean, like, what's the solution? I mean, what do you think? Yeah.
We've had a few jobs that really went well in terms of going to settlement. We didn't have to do deposition. We didn't have to transfer documents. We went to meetings. We'd go to a lot of meetings one-on-one with engineer, resolve 3 issues, come back, resolve 5. And through that process, it was ideal. And it was streamlined. We did have some kind of deadlines, but it wasn't the same as those court deadlines and motion filing and lethargy that can come along with that. So I see the success in being able to have a synergistic program and being able to have that sort of business acumen that you talked about, that you're able to look at the various roles and really streamline. You need a very good conductor, don't you?
Yeah, whoever's leading the charge better know what they're doing, especially in this market. And I think you've stressed how, you know, there's the importance of having people on your team that not only know what they're doing, but are being properly compensated for it, because you know it's not going to get the attention it otherwise needs. And I think that goes for the actual construction process itself, as well as in dealing with a 558 lawsuit or an insurance claim related to construction, something like that. It's really important to make sure that whoever it is that you're hiring is not part of that cottage industry, is really there trying to advocate for you, give you realistic expectations. You know, I can't, how many times I see these engineering reports that have, you know, ranges. You know, we see a lot of stucco issues here, right? Water damage to stucco because of failures of flashing, you know, window door openings, things like that. And I get the engineer's report and it says, you know, $1.1 million to $4 million to repair it. I mean, that's like, by the way, the whole construction project, when they did like the recertification on a 4-year was like $6 million, okay? And that included, by the way, replacement of the windows and doors, all this other things. So I was like, how could it possibly be $1.14 million? It doesn't make any sense. And so like, it's just like a lot of like stupidity, and and they have all the documentation in front of them. It's just a lack of due diligence, and they're getting paid hourly. So they kind of like, whatever, kick the ball, you deal with it. And I think that's a disservice. Like you just said, you just gave an example of one that got resolved without the need of the court. You don't see the courts in a 558 lawsuit for 2 years, so on average. So there's a lot of time there to give you an opportunity to actually get this done. So take advantage of it. Yeah. I mean, I think that's it, right? So, well, June, it's been awesome talking with you. I'm really excited. How can our audience find out more information about your firm?
You can go on our website, willcottengineering.com, and you can call our offices. We're here in Fort Lauderdale, and we welcome the opportunity to speak with you. Dan, it's a privilege working in the industry, and I hope we're able to help give some boards support, because they're the unpaid heroes that are managing the buildings I'm working for. So thank you, boards. And
for any of our community association, whether it's board members, unit owners, or whatever else tuning in, just remember, your board members are volunteering. And for those board members, remember, you are volunteering. A lot of them, I think, sometimes make the mistake of also acting like it's a paid job, and they run it like it's a paid job. And the reality is that these are all your neighbors. So let's be a little professional, be a little polite about it. And we're here to help you, just like June. And I know, June, your firm is fantastic, and really grateful to have you on. The kickoff 2021. It's our 31st episode, June. We ended the year accidentally. We didn't even plan it. 30 episodes. So to have you on our 31st episode, first of 2021, it was an absolute pleasure. I'll see you out in the field, June, I'm sure, whether virtually or actually physically. I know our paths will cross again. So thank you, June, and for having us on. Well, folks, you heard it. There's a lot of things that you can do as community association board members, whether it's unit owners, to get a little bit more educated about the process, even business owners. I know we talked and focused a lot on community associations in our interview there with June, but the reality of it is that business owners go through a similar process, whether it's building a new office building or renovating or building out a new storefront area. Whatever it may be, you're going to go through a similar process if you run into these issues. I even have homeowners, high net worth individuals that we represent, have gone through this process, and we've helped them navigate it and avoid the fate of litigation and the costly fees and expenses typically associated with it. And again, there's a role for lawyers to play in this process. We advocate for obtaining counsel as it relates to your legal obligations and those nuances. And our team of attorneys and experts work closely with your counsel of choice and dual track these things if that's the appropriate thing to be doing. But there's other types of claims related to construction that are typical property related insurance claims that you may even be able to file under your own insurance, as well as file against third-party insurance under a 627 statute, a whole nother statute, and a very complicated process. So just think differently about these things. Think a little bit outside the box. We're here to help. We want to answer your questions. We're not out there to jam a contract down your throat and demand fees. That's not how we work. Most often we work on these things on a contingency fee basis. It's a favorable process. It's a value add. And in some instances, we even cover the cost of doing the investigations, and we have an opportunity to recover that cost back as we prevail on matters. So all kinds of different ways of looking at these things. We're here to help. We're a resource. Again, huge thanks to June, all of our attendees that tuned in this week. Go online, getglobalpro.com, check us out, follow us on all of our social media platforms, like us, follow us. I mean, we're out there. LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We love to connect with our clients and community. So call us anytime, shoot us an email. It's really simple. The phone numbers are on our website, all our social media, as well as the email addresses. We don't want to make this a complicated process. Simply submit an inquiry. We will get back to you. We're here 24/7, 365 days a year to help you as policyholders navigate the process. We're here on the Recovery Report Live every Thursday Every Thursday, starting at 11 o'clock, we bring on professionals and experts just like June to talk about important, relevant issues, whether it's insurance, real estate, business, entrepreneurship, whatever it may be that we think is going to provide you value. We want to be here with you, tuned in live on YouTube and Facebook. We're working on LinkedIn and a few other avenues, but we're here every week. So make sure that you subscribe on YouTube, like us on Facebook, and you'll constantly get the updates when we go live here throughout 2021. We wish you all a healthy and safe new year. Thank you again for tuning in this week on the Recovery Report Live.